Before air conditioning existed, there were cities in China where summer temperatures exceeded 40 degrees Celsius, and the people living in them were not suffering through it. They were managing it systematically, using a set of principles about heat, air, moisture, and architecture that had been refined over centuries of necessity into something that functioned with quiet, reliable precision. This is not a story about people who had no choice and made do. It is a story about people who understood heat transfer better than most modern homeowners do, and who built their homes, organized their days, and managed their environments accordingly. The principles they used are not obsolete. They are physics. Physics does not have a knowledge cutoff, and it does not require a subscription. Energy bills are rising. Air conditioning units fail in the hottest weeks of the year precisely because every unit in a neighborhood is running at maximum capacity simultaneously. And the deeper problem is that most modern homes were not designed to stay cool without mechanical intervention. They were designed to be cooled mechanically, which means the building itself works against you the moment the system stops. The Chinese building and household tradition worked from the opposite assumption, that the structure itself should do most of the work, and that the occupant's knowledge and habits should do the rest. 7 specific techniques from that tradition follow. None of them require a purchase of any significance. All of them work on the same physical principles that air conditioning exploits. They just exploit those principles without the electricity bill. The first technique is cross-ventilation timing, and the reason most people do not get the full benefit of natural airflow is not that their home lacks windows. It is that they open the wrong windows at the wrong time. In traditional Chinese courtyard homes, called Yuan, the management of airflow was treated as a daily practice rather than a passive feature of the building. The principle is this. In the early morning, before outdoor temperature exceeds indoor temperature, every window and door on every side of the structure was opened fully to flush accumulated nighttime coolness through the interior. The moment outdoor temperature crossed indoor temperature, typically between 8 and 10 in the morning depending on season and orientation, all windows on the sun-facing sides were closed and covered, while windows on the shaded north side were left open just enough to allow a small pressure differential to draw air through without admitting direct heat. The mechanism is straightforward convection management. Air moves from high pressure to low pressure, and from warm to cool. A small opening on the cool side and a slightly larger opening on the warm side creates directional airflow that carries heat out rather than in. The error most households make is treating ventilation as binary, either everything open or everything closed. The traditional practice was continuous, fine-grained adjustment based on which direction the thermal gradient was running at any given moment of the day. The second technique is the use of unglazed ceramic vessels filled with water as passive evaporative coolers, a method documented in Chinese households going back through the Han Dynasty and still used in rural communities in Yunnan and Guangxi provinces today. The physics of evaporative cooling is precise. Water requires approximately 2,260 joules of energy per gram to transition from liquid to vapor, and that energy is drawn from the surrounding air, lowering its temperature measurably. An unglazed clay pot, specifically unglazed, because the porosity of the surface is what allows slow weeping of moisture to the outer surface, placed in a room with any airflow at all will cool the air immediately around it by several degrees. In dry climates, this effect is significant enough to be felt across a medium-sized room. In humid climates, the effect is reduced but not eliminated. In the rural courtyard tradition, large ceramic water jars were placed in the center of interior courtyards, which were themselves designed as heat sinks and airflow channels. The courtyard drew hot air upward and out through convection, while the ceramic vessels cooled the air at ground level. The combination of vertical heat exhaust and horizontal evaporative cooling meant that the interior of a well-designed Yuan could remain 10 to 15 degrees cooler than the surrounding outdoor temperature at peak afternoon heat. The vessel itself costs almost nothing. The mechanism is thermodynamics. The third technique is thermal mass activation at night, which is the deliberate use of dense building materials, stone, brick, rammed earth, concrete, as passive heat batteries that are charged with coolness overnight and discharged through the day. This principle was central to the design of traditional Chinese rammed earth homes in the lowest plateau regions of Shaanxi and Gansu, where summer days exceeded 40 degrees and nights dropped to a comfortable 20 or below. The walls, often 60 to 80 centimeters thick, absorbed the coolness of the night air through open ventilation and stored it in their thermal mass. When temperatures rose the following day, the walls released that stored coolness slowly into the interior, functioning as a passive air conditioning system with no moving parts and no energy input beyond the temperature differential between day and night. In a modern home, the same principle can be applied to any dense surface: a stone floor, a concrete wall, a brick fireplace surround. The method is to expose those surfaces to maximum cool airflow overnight, which means opening windows strategically after sunset and running any available fans to drive cool air across dense surfaces. Then seal the building before outdoor temperature rises in the morning. The thermal mass will release its stored coolness into the room across the following 6 to 8 hours. The effectiveness depends entirely on how much temperature differential exists between day and night in your climate. In most temperate and semi-arid regions, that differential is sufficient to produce a measurable effect with zero energy cost during the day. The fourth technique is strategic internal shading, using materials that block radiant heat without blocking airflow, which is a distinction that most modern window treatments fail to make. A heavy curtain blocks light and also stops airflow entirely. In traditional southern Chinese homes in Fujian and Guangdong provinces, interior spaces were shaded using split bamboo screens, and woven reed mats hung several centimeters away from window openings rather than directly against them. The gap between the screen and the window frame served two purposes. It created a small dead air space that reduced conductive heat transfer through the screen material itself, and it allowed airflow to continue moving through the window at the sides and top of the screen, while the screen blocked the direct radiant path of sunlight into the interior. Radiant heat from sunlight is the dominant source of heat gain in a residential building during daylight hours. It moves in a straight line and can be interrupted without stopping convective airflow. A light-colored material hung at a slight gap from the window will block 60 to 70% of solar radiation, while allowing a substantial portion of airflow to continue. The material cost is minimal. Bamboo screens, reed mats, or any light-colored woven material on a rod with spacers achieves the same physical result. The principle is that you are not trying to seal the window. You are trying to intercept a specific wavelength of energy before it enters the room, while allowing the air, which carries far less heat per unit of movement, to continue passing through. The fifth technique is ground-level sleeping and resting positioning, which sounds trivially simple and delivers results that anyone who has tried it will confirm are not trivial at all. Hot air rises. This is not a metaphor. It is the direct result of thermal expansion reducing the density of warm air, causing it to move upward and displace denser cool air downward. In a room with any temperature differential between floor and ceiling, the temperature at floor level is measurably lower, in some conditions by as much as 5 to 8 degrees Celsius, than the temperature at head height when standing or sitting in a chair. Traditional Chinese sleeping arrangements in summer, particularly in the humid south, shifted to low platform beds, bamboo sleeping mats laid directly on stone or tile floors, and daytime resting on floor-level platforms specifically to take advantage of this gradient. In Guangdong and Fujian households, a woven bamboo mat on a cool stone floor in a shaded interior room was the preferred sleeping surface through the hottest months, not out of poverty, but out of a precise understanding of where the coolest air in the room was located and how to position the body within it. This technique costs nothing and requires only the willingness to spend time closer to the floor during peak heat hours. The physics is working in your favor the entire time whether you use it or not. The sixth technique involves what traditional Chinese households understood about the relationship between clothing fabric, body temperature, and the perception of heat, and it represents a form of personal cooling technology that predates every mechanical system by several millennia. Loosely woven natural fabrics, specifically ramie, linen, and particular weaves of raw silk, cool the body through a combination of mechanisms that synthetic fabrics and even tightly woven cotton cannot replicate. The loose weave allows air circulation directly against the skin surface, supporting the evaporation of perspiration, which is the body's primary cooling mechanism. The natural fiber itself has a lower specific heat than synthetic materials, meaning it absorbs less radiant heat from the environment per unit of material. And ramie in particular, a plant fiber that has been cultivated in China for over 5,000 years, has a surface texture that minimizes contact area between the fabric and the skin, which reduces conductive heat transfer from a warm garment to the body underneath. In summer households in the Jiangnan region around the Yangtze River Delta, where summer heat and humidity are significant, ramie and loose linen garments were standard practical clothing, not formal wear. The understanding that what you wear in heat is a thermal management decision rather than an aesthetic one was embedded in the domestic culture of these regions as basic seasonal knowledge. Switching to loosely woven linen or ramie during hot months requires no equipment and delivers a measurable reduction in perceived body temperature that no fan can fully replicate, because it is operating at the level of the skin surface itself. The seventh technique is the one this list has been building toward, and it requires a slight shift in how you think about cooling your home. Every technique described so far manages heat after it enters your environment or your body. This final technique is about preventing the largest single source of heat gain from operating at peak output during the hours when you need your home coolest, and it comes from the Chinese kitchen tradition of what is called the split fire day. In traditional households across multiple Chinese regions, the pattern of cooking was organized entirely around the thermal logic of the day. The morning meal was cooked early, before outdoor temperature rose, using whatever heat output the cooking process required. The evening meal was cooked after peak heat had passed, typically after 6 in the evening when outdoor temperature had begun to fall and could begin ventilating the cooking heat out, rather than adding it to an already hot interior. The midday period, the hottest 6 hours of the day, involved no cooking at all. What was eaten at midday was prepared earlier and required no heat: preserved foods, cold grains, fermented vegetables, dried fruit, foods that needed nothing from a stove. The practical insight behind this pattern is one that modern households almost entirely ignore. Cooking is a significant heat source. A gas or electric stove running for 45 minutes at midday in a hot kitchen adds thermal load to your home at exactly the moment when your home is fighting hardest to stay below outdoor temperature. The traditional solution was not to eat less or to be uncomfortable. It was to front-load and back-load the cooking, store the midday food in the coolest part of the home, and protect the critical midday hours from any additional heat generation. Applied today, this means preparing a cold lunch the night before or early in the morning. It means keeping a supply of foods that need no cooking: preserved items, fresh fruit, cold grain salads, anything that requires no stove time. It means running your oven or stove only in the early morning and the evening. The energy saving is real. The reduction in indoor heat gain is real. And unlike every other technique on this list, this one changes the thermal behavior of your home not by managing how heat moves through it, but by reducing how much heat you are generating inside it at the worst possible moment. What all 7 of these techniques share is a single underlying principle. The Chinese household tradition treated cooling not as something you produce, but as something you preserve. Coolness already exists every night in most climates. It exists at ground level while heat pools near the ceiling. It exists on the shaded north wall while the south wall bakes. It exists in the thermal mass of stone and brick before the day's heat penetrates. The question these techniques are all answering is not how to generate coldness from energy, but how to find where the coolness already is and keep it where you need it long enough to matter. The thing you can do tonight, before this becomes another idea you meant to try, is to open every window in your home after sunset and run any available fan to push air across your densest floors and walls for at least 2 hours. Then close everything before the outdoor temperature rises in the morning. Do that for 3 consecutive nights, and measure the difference in your home's midday indoor temperature against what it was this week. The physics has been working this whole time. You just have to decide to work with it.